Hello and welcome to Crowforest, the podcast. So last time we finished up reading June 26 of 2022. So this time we will pick up where we left off with June 27 of 2022. Today is the last day of my first production trip, so my main goal for today is to make sure that I have enough material for the trailer that I'm planning to release later this year on Halloween. One shot that I knew I wanted was the shot of lighting the 3 candles and then having them go out for no apparent reason. I had done a couple of rough cuts of the trailer that I had released at the ends of my most recent Crowforest reviews videos, and for those I did mock-ups of the shot that looked pretty good, but for the first official trailer, I really wanted to have the final shot, or at the very least, a shot in the right setting. I could always go back and redo it later if I needed to. So I got my camera and lighter, and I filmed the shot, focusing the camera on the candles while I lit them, moving the camera with the lighter as I set it down, and then returning to the candles, which I had blown out while the camera was off them. Like I said, I've done several prototypes of this shot, and those turned out really well, so I'm really hoping that this one turns out well also. The next thing we did was to get 2 shots involving Maureen sitting on the couch. The first one we got was the shot immediately following the sequence with the candles. In the script, once she finally gets the candles to stay lit, Maureen goes over to the couch to read. So I set up my stationary camera on my tripod facing the couch for the scene. Maureen entered the shot from the direction of the altar table with the candles and went to sit down. She picks up a book and sat there for a moment, and then looks up towards the altar table where the candles had supposedly just gone out. She throws up her arms in frustration, gets up, and goes to bed, by way of the kitchen. This actually leads right into the shot that we got yesterday. Or, rather, the shot that you may recall from last week we actually forgot to get due to a number of complications that arose. So, yeah. That. This actually leads right into the shot that we got yesterday, with Maureen getting water from the fridge and the camera panning over to the miniature house with the tiny wax figure standing in front of the miniature fridge. The next shot we got was very similar to the shot from yesterday that I just described. In this shot, Maureen is sitting on the couch once again reading a book, but this time the camera pans over to the miniature house on the table, coming to rest on the tiny wax figure lounging on the miniature couch. We actually got 2 different versions of that shot. The first one was just the tiny wax figure on the couch, but the second has a tiny wax figure surrounded by couch cushions that match the large ones around Maureen on the real couch. I like the second shot better, but it might end up being a continuity error, since I don't think her decorations had started appearing yet. But maybe this can be the first time they start sneaking in unnoticed. That could work. While I was waiting for Maureen to change between costumes for the next shot, I got some shots of cabinets and drawers opening on their own. Or at least I'm hoping that's what it will look like once I've edited it. I set my camera inside one of the cabinets, about in the center of the middle shelf, and then I ducked down out of frame and started opening and closing the cabinet doors. Next, I put my camera on a middle shelf of the pantry and did the same thing, hiding behind the door and opening and closing it from out of frame. Then I got out my tripod and set up my camera in front of some drawers. I set it up where just the very edge of the drawers were out of frame when they were fully opened. Then I pushed the drawers closed from out of frame. This was a little tricky because I had to push with enough force to close the drawer in one take. But I couldn't allow my hands to travel beyond the edge of the frame. It was a very fine balance, but doing it this way, I would hopefully be able to loop the footage in post, playing it backwards first, and then forwards, and make it look like a smooth motion. So, the way I have it written in the book is playing it backwards and forwards. I think it would be beneficial to go back and specify backwards first, because I'm closing it, but I want it to open first, so it looks like So I am playing it backwards the first time, but since I'm looping it, it's like, okay, after the initial play it backwards, then do it forward, backward a few more times, so that it looks like it's continuously happening, and make sure to cut out the frames where you don't want it to stay closed too long. You want it to be a continuous, smooth motion. So I guess I'll go back into the book and make that a little clearer, because it's a little confusing reading it, and I was actually there, so I can only imagine it would be even more confusing if I hadn't been there. Where was I? Playing it first backwards and then forwards to make it look like one smooth motion. Or at least that was the idea. I repeated this process for several of the other drawers, as well as the oven. Oh, and I also got a pretty cool shot by putting my phone inside the dryer and getting a shot of the door opening and closing. That one turned out pretty cool, and I have yet to use that clip, even though it's kinda cool, so I should put it somewhere, even if it doesn't make sense. After that, we attempted to get some crane shots, both in the bedroom and in the kitchen. Now, as I previously mentioned, I do not own a crane, but what I do have is a selfie stick and a step stool. So I got up onto the step stool and held the selfie stick out as far as I could reach over the kitchen. The idea was that Maureen was being watched from inside the attic. I had originally wanted to put my phone inside one of the grates on the ceiling to get this shot, but that didn't end up working out, so I had to use the selfie stick. Yeah, so the reason, or at least one of the reasons, that shot did not end up working out is because Maureen's ceilings are really absurdly high, and I could not reach them at all. I used her ladder to change the filter on the lower part of the ceiling, but yeah, the high part in the kitchen area is so absurdly high that, yeah, I couldn't get up to it at all, no matter what I did. So, yeah, sorry. But, yeah, not doable. I thought that I might be able to add in a grate in post-production, and maybe that can work. I'll give it a try, at least. I wasn't able to reach the selfie stick out as far as I had hoped, so I ended up pulling out my other phone and getting another angle at the same time. Okay, yes. You're probably wondering why I have a second phone, and it is a whole thing, and maybe I'll talk about that someday, but, yeah, it's kind of a whole thing, so, if I get a bunch of generated interest from this, which, I don't think that's gonna happen, but, yeah, if that happens, then maybe I'll consider doing an episode on just that, because there is enough to fill an episode of just that whole nonsense situation going on there, so, yeah. Something to look forward to if anyone is interested. I wasn't able to reach the selfie stick out quite as far as I had hoped, so I ended up pulling out my other phone and ended up getting another angle at the same time, so that at least I would have another angle to cut to for any parts of the crane shot that didn't end up working. And it's a good thing I did, because when I reviewed the crane footage, some of it worked, but some of it didn't. But with the alternate angle footage, I should be able to edit together something fairly reasonable. Moving on to the bedroom, I set up my tripod with a stationary camera, and then I got the stool for the overhead crane shot. We ended up having some trouble with the lighting, what with making it dark enough to sleep, but also light enough for the camera to see things. In the end, we had to open the curtains to let some daylight in, despite the fact that all of the clips we were filming were supposed to take place at night. But there was just no helping it. If my camera couldn't see anything, then there was no scene. I really wanted to avoid day for night, but as far as day for night goes, I guess this isn't too bad, or at least I guess I'll find out soon enough. So I guess that's a wrap for the first production trip. Now to get this footage edited and see how it turned out. So, that is the end of the section, the end of the first production trip. So that is the end of the first production section of my book. So, next time we will pick back up with post-production on July 3 of 2022. Hope to see you then. And those turned out really well, so I'm hoping that this one turns out well also. So I'm hoping that this one turns out well as well. No, that sounds even worse. So I'm hoping that this shot as well turns out well also. Nope, getting even worse, even worse.